The US president sent mixed signals about potential US intervention in Venezuela, playing down concerns of imminent war against the South American nation, but saying that its leader Nicolas Maduro's days were numbered. Now, the US president's remarks, they were made during a CBS interview released on Sunday, and they come as the United States amass military units in the Caribbean. Now, some of the most dramatic infrastructure improvements which are occurring at the former Roosevelt Roads base, where crews are upgrading taxiways with improvements that analysts say would enable the use of fighter jets as well as cargo planes. In addition, the US is building facilities at civilian airports in Puerto Rico and in the US Virgin Islands. The two US territories sit roughly about 500 miles from Venezuela. So as you see on the map, Venezuela is pretty much surrounded by US military assets. The military buildup in the region is the largest unrelated to disaster relief since 1994, when the United States sent 2 aircraft carriers and more than 20,000 troops to Haiti to take part in Operation Uphold Democracy. Now, since early September, the United States has carried out at least 14 strikes against alleged drug vessels in the Caribbean and Pacific regions, killing 61 people. Moreover, according to Reuters and US officials, the Trump administration since August has deployed at least 13 warships, 5 support vessels, and a nuclear submarine to the region from various naval bases and global deployments, including the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, the largest vessel of its kind. This carrier strike group, with roughly 10,000 troops and dozens of aircraft and weapon systems, is on its way from the Adriatic Sea. According to satellite imagery and ship tracking data, one of the Ford's destroyers cleared Gibraltar on the 29th of October recently. Now, a ramp-up of US military aircraft is also underway, along with the Ford aircraft carrier, which can hold more than 75 military aircraft. The Pentagon has sent 10 F-35 advanced aircraft and spy planes along with that. And this is according to previous Reuters reporting. The military is also shipping in material. Reuters tracked dozens of flights into the region by C-17 cargo aircraft. The US president, who has often styled himself as a peace president, has recently been pushing for armaments across the world. There is also nuclear talk taking place of nuclear tests, which has come in very recently, and heavy military presence in the Caribbean. Now, to discuss this further, I'm now being joined live by Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, who's joining me from Kuala Lumpur. He's a foreign affairs and security strategist from the University of Malaya. Collins, thanks so much for joining me here on the broadcast. Now, the US military is upgrading a long-abandoned naval base in the Caribbean. How does Trump's increasing military tread in the region fall in line with his claims of resolving wars across the world? Has the image of the peace president been shed?
Not at all. His approach has always been peace through strength. It's not a preparation for war. It's a deterrent signal to prevent one. So we can see that under his first term, no new wars were started. This is very rare among modern US presidents, history. And, this talk of, this increased military presence in Africa, in maybe possibly in Nigeria or Latin America, these are all meant to prevent a war from starting in the first place. So Trump recognized the problem of, this power vacuum being the sole factor of breeding these new conflicts, whether in Ukraine, whether in the Middle East. So this peace through strength approach is meant to deter conflict from breaking out. It's not meant as a push to create conflicts, but to prevent one. And we have seen now, under his watch, up to 8 conflicts have been prevented, have been deterred through the sole factor of, him deploying the full might of the US hard power presence. And his version of peace is not silence or withdrawal, but active peace. And what he's doing now is to recalibrate, to reset the concept of deterrence globally, to restore peace through accountability and preparedness. And of course, his language is sometimes misunderstood as warmongering, but his communication style is always deliberately forceful, and to create this notion of strategic ambiguity, a hallmark of his deterrence approach. And, others have failed through this concept of peace through appeasement. But Trump's approach of peace through strength, peace through deterrence, has kept global actors cautious and, to keep leverage on the US and to keep adversaries guessing what's the next move. And of course, also to have the higher power advantage to prevent one from breaking out.
Collins, I hear your point, but allow me to put this across to you. When you talk about deterrence, do you see this as deterrence, or is this more as an era of intervention, which we are seeing, at least in the Caribbean? There has also been a warning shot which has been fired towards Nigeria regarding military action taking place over there. Do you see these as deterrence as well, or is this a new era of intervention for the peace president?
It's still very much in line with the concept of deterrence to project strength, to ensure that adversaries get the message of the repercussions, the implications of not following the international norms and rules-based order. And this has been also meant to prevent escalations of conflict. We can see that through these strong words for Nigeria and of course also for Latin America, for Venezuela, these are meant also to prevent escalations of the issues at hand, which will also impact the US. And of course also it's a standmark, it's a hallmark of these preventive measures being taken. And the threat of force is being used to prevent bloodshed, not to create one. So this has always been the strength which Trump has always been ready to use. Understood. This to successful effects. We have seen that before, and we will see that in the coming months of his approach now. It's a new concept which has proven to be true and which will ensure that the rules-based order and peace and stability in the world will be kept through this new readiness by Trump to do that.
All right, Collins, stay with me. Let me cut across to our other guest who's joined us live as well. I'm now being joined by Hafid Boutalev, who's joining us from Casablanca in Morocco. Hafid, thanks so much for joining me here on the broadcast. Hafid is a geopolitics and international relations analyst from AOB Group. Now, Hafid, Collins feels these are all acts of deterrence when it comes to interventions or any kind of militarization of the Caribbean region or any kind of warnings being given to the African region or nuclear tests, which we'll come to a little later. How do you see this one?
Well, let me tell you on the African perspective, it is quite unlikely for America to attack Nigeria. Let's recall that Nigeria is 200 million people. It's the biggest black country in the world. And we know that there are blacks voting for Donald Trump. And I'm sure that as long as this issue will last, this question will raise among the black voters for Donald Trump is that this is a war against black people. And this is quite unlikely. And let's recall as well that America had military bases in the region, especially in Niger and in Chad, and that these bases were dismantled in 2024 and early 25. So it means that it's quite in opposition to this stance that Donald Trump wants to show. And I agree a little bit with your other guest, is that it's a posture of the Donald Trump to show that he is the first superpower and even among countries that are quite strong, like Nigeria in Africa.
Hafid, let me just quickly ask you to just...
the concern should be in the...
I think we will try to reconnect with Hafid because his voice is breaking. Colin, let me come back to you in the meantime. The latest nuclear tests that Trump has spoken about in this latest interview, he mentions it as a response to what Russia and China is doing. Is this very much in line with the concept of solving wars around the world when US is also now returning to testing nuclear weapons?
This is a retaliation to what Russia has been doing. Russia has been the one who has been, testing the waters, testing responses, and by this move by President Trump, it's a brilliant strategic move to ensure that Russia toes the line. And we have seen how only through deterrence alone, or only through hard power alone, that conflicts can be prevented. And this is not being akin to be seen as a move to start a new nuclear war. Far from that. And we have seen how warnings, deterrence have been used to avoid a single shot being fired, in which diplomacy and dialogue can still be used. And we have seen that also it is being used hand in hand in regards to these previous conflicts being prevented. So this is also a strategic move to ensure that any potential future move by Moscow to enhance nuclear tests would then be seen as being the one who is out to provoke a new nuclear tension. And this move to resume nuclear testing is also in line with sending a very powerful message that any move to disrupt the norms of regards to nuclear management will not be tolerated. But it doesn't mean that it will be used. It doesn't mean that the US is out to create a new nuclear tension. But the message has always been that the US will use that as a moral compass. It's a moral deterrence to ensure that any other powers inclined to use the N word, as what Trump has repeatedly stated, the nuclear word, will not be tolerated, because in this day and age, of course, President Trump's vision has always been to ensure that a new nuclear warfare is not in the works, and this is exactly the strength that is needed to prevent the escalations of the nuclear doctrine.
All right, Collins. Hafid, let me quickly come to you for a reaction on that as well, regarding the nuclear tests which Trump is suggesting that US is now going to start with, because Russia and China are also doing it. He also mentioned Pakistan is carrying out these nuclear tests. Now, is this very much in line with his peace president persona that he has carried all throughout at least his first term? And at this point, he has also mentioned a lot about armaments across the world, asking own allies through the West to increase their defense spending. Is this in line with the peace president persona that he has had?
Well, deterrence doesn't mean war. So this is an important fact. Paradoxically, deterrence since the end of the Second World War has brought peace to the world, and nuclear deterrence is an important a pillar of this global peace, I would say. This doesn't mean really a will to go to war. However, let's say that the tone now has changed. Let's recall that Donald Trump was aiming the Nobel Prize. Now that the Nobel Prize is behind and he has a long year, a whole long year to wait until the next session of the Nobel Prize Committee. So he can afford this posture, and this is stunt politics, of course. And also, let's say that all these aggressive postures of Trump has always paid. Let's give the example of now the Indian oil refiners getting away from Russian suppliers because of the sanctions. So as long as for Donald Trump this works, he will carry on this posture, on this stance. And this seems quite logic. And also for the nuclear tests, this is aiming at his own electorate, the MAGA electorate. He wants to show them that he is a strong classical American politician, and that he is able to use the nuclear weapon.
I hear your point.
This is a few months before the elections, the next elections of the chamber.
Losing your voice a bit in the middle, but I'd like to...
In a few months, there will be a political campaign.
All right, Hafid, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. We were able to get some parts of your views, but I understand that you're calling this deterrence, as is Collins. But as of now, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, we are speaking of nuclear tests. We are speaking of warnings being given towards the African region. We are speaking of militarization in the Caribbean region, things that we had not seen in the recent past. Is he still the peace president? We'll discuss this once again, maybe a little later as things pan out, because this is Trump. You never know what really happens until it happens. Thanks so much for joining me.
If there is just a...
Collins, quickly, we're really running out of time. If something you need to say.
Quickly, is that no doubt that there'll be a reaction from Global South, because people will quickly assimilate this posture to imperialism.
I take your point.
If this posture lasts too long, it's going to be assimilated to imperialism.
All right. Thanks, Hafid, and thanks, Collins, for joining me here on Point and Counterpoint. There'll be more to discuss. Would love to have you both on the broadcast again.